What's up, everybody? How's it going? Hope you're all doing well today. It's August 1st of 2022. Welcome to this edition of the Super Stream. Have a few news stories we got to talk about today. We're going to start off with the passing of NBA legend Bill Russell, who died at 88 yesterday. Another story we'll be talking about is the death of actor Tony Dow, who played Wally Cleaver on the show Leave It to Beaver from the 50s and 60s. And we're also going to take a look at the World Health Organization. Last week, July 23rd, the WHO came out and called monkeypox a virus of international concern. And if you thought the death toll on the CV19 bug was low, oh man. Wait till you see how few people are actually dying from monkeypox. The fact that they're making a big deal out of it is actually pretty absurd. Kind of funny, almost, if you look at it that way. But let's start off with the big news story from yesterday. Bill Russell, who has won the most championships in the history of the National Basketball Association with 11, dying at the age of 88, which is the same age his former teammate Casey Jones was when he passed away on Christmas Day of 2020. We'll touch on his numerology as we go. But it's important to understand the riddle and synchronicity behind the death of Bill Russell, and there's a number of things from yesterday that we're going to touch on. The big detail about Bill Russell is that he went to college at the University of San Francisco. He would then go on to play his entire NBA career for the Boston Celtics. And consider how the Boston Celtics just made it to the NBA Finals this past season, where they lost to the Golden State Warriors, who play their home games in the city of San Francisco. Of course, here we see the 2022 NBA Finals ending in 6 games. On the date June 16th was the last day of that series. We'll touch on that in a second. The University of San Francisco is a Jesuit university, and this is an important detail. Notice how the university, up until the year 1930, was actually named after Saint Ignatius, one of the founders of the Jesuit order. Ignatius of Loyola passed away on the date July 31st in the year 1556. The Catholic Church has thus made July 31st the feast date of Ignatius of Loyola. And not coincidentally, this happens to be the same date that Bill Russell passed away, July 31st. So, of course, the University of San Francisco is in the city of San Francisco, California. And the city of San Francisco is named after another famous figure in the Catholic Church, Saint Francis of Assisi. Here we have a look at Francis of Assisi here. And the reason this is so relevant is because consider how the current Pope is named after Francis of Assisi, Pope Francis. And in regards to the University of San Francisco being a Jesuit university, Francis is the first Jesuit Pope in the history of the Catholic Church. So all of this ties together pretty well, but there's another major detail from yesterday that connects to the death of Bill Russell. While Bill Russell is the winningest player in the history of basketball with 11 championships, Ric Flair is the winningest champion in the history of pro wrestling with 16 recognized world championship reigns. And on the exact same day that Bill Russell died, July 31st, Ric Flair had his final match. That's right, at the ripe old age of 73, Ric Flair still wrestling in the ring. And he had this bout with where he teamed up with his son-in-law to go square off against Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal. And this was on the same date, July 31st, 2022. So on the same date he retires, a man who is widely considered to be the greatest pro wrestler of all time, a man who is widely considered to be the greatest NBA player of all time, passes away. Now, the reason that Ric Flair's last match event took place at the Nashville Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee, is because of Nashville's proximity, the auditorium's proximity to Nissan Stadium. And Nissan Stadium is where WWE just held their annual SummerSlam event this past weekend, one day earlier, on the date July 30th. Now, right across the river from Nissan Stadium is the Batman Building, or the AT&T Building. And you may recall on Christmas Day back in 2020, we had a bombing right in this area in the shadow of the Batman Building, just across the river from Nissan Stadium. Now, that Nashville bombing, again, on Christmas Day of 2020, the same exact date that Bill Russell's longtime teammate Casey Jones passed away, December 25th of 2020. Jones was also 88 years old. And look at Jones's career, 1958 through 1967, all of which with the Boston Celtics. Bill Russell, 56 through 69, all of which were with the Boston Celtics. So a pretty tremendous synchronicity here, connecting to WWE, SummerSlam, and essentially the greatest wrestler of all time, Ric Flair. Also consider the date of SummerSlam, July 30th, which is the gematria of both sacrifice and ritual sacrifice. And the gematria of these phrases were repeatedly attributed in the passing of Bill Russell. Now, what makes this especially interesting is that let's check out the etymology of the name Russell. Russell is a name that originates from the Old Norse language, and it actually means red-haired. Well, obviously, Bill Russell does not have red hair, but think about Ric Flair, how he is notorious for generating massive amounts of blood during his big matches. This is a practice in wrestling called blading, where a wrestler legitimately cuts their forehead open, hopefully hitting a certain vein which causes a lot of blood. So Ric Flair spent a lot of time wrestling with red hair. So let's go back to the University of San Francisco, which, again, connected to Saint Ignatius, and is a huge part of this riddle. Now, the Jesuit order pays special attention to a cipher called Latin Gematria. This was also formerly called Jewish Gematria on the Gematrinator website, a cipher seen on the left side of your screen, which is structured similarly to ancient Hebrew and Greek isopsephy charts. Notice how in this method, University of San Francisco has this 212 value. Of course, the zeros become ignored in numerology, so this turns into a 212. Well, 212 was the birthday of Bill Russell, February 12th. Consider how this date can also be written internationally as 12/2. Well, in the standard 26-letter alphabetic order, notice how San Francisco has a gematria value of 122, just like his birthday. Back at the 212, however, February 12th, Bill Russell would go on to die on July 31st, which is the 212th day of the year. 212 is the gematria of ritual sacrifice in two of the English Kabbalah ciphers. And when you write out ritual sacrifice in Latin gematria, notice how you get this value of 616. On the date of his death, Bill Russell was a span of exactly 4,616 weeks old. This number is relevant because the NBA Finals, which featured two teams connected to Bill Russell, the San Francisco team and the Celtics, ended on June 16th, the date that's written, 6/16. Now, if you fast forward a span of 46 days after June 16th, this brings us to July 31st when Bill Russell passed away. And the number 46 is important to the Celtics. First of all, notice how the team was founded in the year 46. In the language of gematria, using the reverse method, Celtics sums to 46. In this reduction or Pythagorean method, we simply flip the alphabet backwards. So you'll see in reverse, the letter Z is 1, Y is 2, all the way through A is 26. So here we have Celtics summing to 46. Bill Russell dying a span of 46 days after the Celtics lost to the team from San Francisco. 46 also relevant for its connection to the word sacrifice. Sacrifice equals 46 in reduction. And remember from earlier, we mentioned how Ric Flair is currently 73 years old with his last wrestling match. The word sacrifice also 73, just like ritual sacrifice. Now, in the reverse order, you may notice that the word sacrifice has a value of 170. Well, measuring from his last birthday to the date that he passed away was a span of 170 days. As this video goes on, we're also going to talk about the myriad connections to the moon that are in this story. Notice how the word moon equals 170. This is pretty important because in this same cipher, the moon sums to 283. Bill Russell's full name is William Felton Russell, which also shares this 283 value in the reverse order. But back to this 170, the value of moon. In numerology, once again, the 0 is dropped. So this here represents the number 17. Notice how Russell's death fell on a date with numerology of 17. Furthermore, July 31st leaves 153 days on the Gregorian calendar. And the number 153 is the 17th triangular number. So if you add every number 1 through 17, you get this 153. 17, also an important number to the NBA. NBA sums to 17 in ordinal. 17 also connected to the kill code. Kill equals 17, and not only does kill rhyme with Bill, but Bill also with this 17 value. This is another number that's important to the Boston Celtics, who have won a total of 17 championships in their existence. The 17th prime number is 59. And if you measure from the start of the NBA Finals, which featured 2 teams connected to Russell, to the date that he passed away, you even get 59 days. And the name William Russell sums to 59 in reduction. So obviously there's a strong link to San Francisco here, but this goes even further. The Boston Celtics are currently coached by a man named Ime Udoka, who used to play in the NBA himself. And this past season, when he took the Celtics to the finals, this was his first year as the head coach of the team. And isn't it interesting that Udoka also went to the University of San Francisco, where he played for the Dons, which is the team's mascot. Ime Udoka's middle name is Sunday, which is kind of strange, right? But not that strange when you consider that Bill Russell died on a Sunday. Remember, Sunday sums to 84, 78, and 21. These are the same digits found in the word Jesuit. And it was a Jesuit university at San Francisco that both Bill Russell and Ime Udoka attended. So there's definitely a strong connection there. Also consider how Ime Udoka was born in the year 77. And we'll talk about this because Boston equals 77. And this upcoming season of the NBA will be the 77th in the history of the sport. Also see how Boston equals 22, which connects to this year, 2022. Let's take another look at the University of San Francisco. The university was established on October 15th, and October 15th is right around the time where the NBA season starts. And it's actually possible that it will start on this date this year. In October this year, the University of San Francisco turns 167 years old. And remember, the city of San Francisco is named after Francis of Assisi. And notice how Francis of Assisi sums to 167 in the alphabetic order. So a very important connection there. Also considering the birthday here, 12/2, the 12th day of February. I believe I pointed out how this connects to San Francisco, 122. Also, Pope Francis, who takes his name from the same person as San Francisco, also summing to 122. And the city of San Francisco even sits on the 122nd meridian. So the university was previously named after Saint Ignatius. And notice how Ignatius of Loyola has this gematria of 201 in the alphabetic order. I also want to point out this 1053. Remember, Ignatius's feast date is July 31st, which is the date that leaves 153 days in the year. So 153, 153 connecting to Ignatius of Loyola. But this 201 is a really big number to the Jesuit order, also known as the Society of Jesus. The Jesuit order equals 201, and the first pope to ever come from the Society of Jesus, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, which is the real name of Pope Francis. Notice how his name also gives us this 201. If you measure from the birthday of Bill Russell to the birthday of Ric Flair, notice how these two men were born exactly 201 sidereal months apart from one another. A sidereal month is also called a lunar orbit, the time it takes for the moon to orbit the Earth and come in direct conjunction with the same star in the sky. This is a period of a little over 27 days. So not only do you have the 186, the exact number of lunar phases between the birth of Bill Russell and Ric Flair, but you also get this 201 sidereal months. And let's talk more about some of these connections with Ric Flair before we move on here. So we call him Flair, right? Flair. It's easy to say, easy to understand, and it's a cool name because this guy has a lot of flair, a lot of charisma. But his real name is actually spelled Flair, right? I-E-H-R. Well, the name Ric Flair sums to 88. Intriguing because this is the age that Bill Russell was when he passed away. I almost said Bill Simmons, another guy connected to basketball, but of course this is Bill Russell we're chatting about. So Ric Flair with this 88, but his wrestling name Flair, notice how this sums to 46. And this was another significant number, as we pointed out. Remember, Celtics equals 46, founded in 46. Bill Russell dead 46 days after the end of the NBA Finals. SummerSlam this past weekend was held at Nissan Stadium. Notice how Nissan Stadium also gives us this 46 in reduction. Ric Flair's nickname is the Nature Boy. And notice how Nature Boy has the same 122 and 50 gematria as San Francisco. This past year's NBA Finals wrapped up the NBA's 76th season in its history. The name Ric Flair, as he spells it on the card, would be 76. This is another number that he shares with San Francisco. San Francisco also summing to 76 in reverse reduction. So how old was Ric Flair yesterday? He was born on February 25th, which means yesterday was 156 days after Ric Flair's birthday. This is an important number to Bill Russell, whose name sums to 156 in the reverse alphabetic order. And Russell spent his entire career playing for the Boston Celtics, which sums to 156 in ordinal. Consider how the Celtics' current coach, Ime Udoka, his name equals 156 when you use capital letters. By virtue of Russell and Flair being born exactly 186 lunar phases apart, this is also 15 lunar years and 6 months. And I don't talk about lunar years very often, but a lunar year is 12 lunar phases. So this 186 is 15 lunar years and 6 months. But this 186 is also pretty interesting, because this is the number that sits between the gematria of these two men. The name Richard Morgan Flair sums to 187, whereas the name William Russell sums to 185. We'll talk more about that number in a second. Also worth pointing out that the Nature Boy has this 170 gematria, Bill Russell dying a span of 170 days after his birthday. And check out all the overlap here between Nature Boy, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and William Felton Russell, sharing 121 and 104 gematria. So a lot of connections here between these two men, all the way down to the etymology, right? Russell meaning red-haired, Ric Flair spending a lot of his career in the ring with red hair after juicing himself. But no gematria riddle is complete without an astrological element. And I want to talk more about this connection to the moon and the eclipse code that Bill Russell has. So, man, where to begin here? All right, so let's start with this 156. Remember, Flair was 156 days after his birthday yesterday. Bill Russell 156, just like Boston Celtics. This also connects to the place where Bill Russell died, which was Mercer Island, Washington. Notice how Mercer Island, Washington sums to 1506 in Sumerian gematria. This cipher uses the alphabetic order, multiplying each number by 6 prior to adding it to the equation. So here we see the 156, Mercer Island, Washington. The phrase ritual sacrifice also equals 1506 in reverse Sumerian. This is considered a major eclipse number because eclipses always occur 1, 5, or 6 lunar phases after the last one. In Hebrew gematria, the word eclipse even equals 156. Notice how Bill Russell's full name, William Felton Russell, sums to 257 in the alphabetic order. This is the same value as total solar eclipse in reverse, 257. Measuring from the first Great American Total Solar Eclipse in August of 2017 to the death of Bill Russell was 257 weeks. Consider how the phrase blood sacrifice also sums to 257. This might be relevant. Blood sacrifice 332. That's the same as Boston. Boston equals 332. So as we mentioned, the name William Felton Russell gives us this 283 value, which matches the moon. The moon equals 283. In the standard alphabetic order, the word moon equals 57. And the moon has a 57-degree range of declination, 28.5 degrees north and south. there's actually more to this lunar standstill riddle, but I'm not going to get too deep into this. We're just going to focus on this 57 for now, because this number was super important to the career of Bill Russell in the NBA. Bill Russell's first NBA championship came in the year 57. Bill Russell's birthday is February 12th, which, intriguingly enough, is the same date as Super Bowl 57. And if you watch some of my recent videos, I've done a lot of work on how Super Bowl 57 is like the ultimate moon game. This is a huge moon tribute. And the 57th Super Bowl, all connecting to the moon, happening on Bill Russell's birthday. The city of San Francisco was initially founded on June 29th of 1776. Now, if you measure from that date to the date that Bill Russell was born, check out the number of days. 57,570. So you get a double 57 in the age of San Francisco when Bill Russell was born. The last time the Boston Celtics won a championship was in the year 2008. And if you measure from that championship to the date of Bill Russell's death, you get 5,157 days. Well, not only do we have the 57 here, but we also have the 51, which is the reverse value of moon, 51. We also talked about Pope Francis, how this is connected to him, as this man shares the same etymology as San Francisco. Well, measuring from Pope Francis's birthday to Bill Russell's birthday is 57 days. Now, I want to look more closely at July 31st, the date that Bill Russell died here. The Boston Celtics represent the Irish community. Of course, Boston is heavily Irish, but no team celebrates this more than the Celtics, who have the lucky leprechaun here in their logo. And think about St. Patrick's Day, right? The day that we most notably celebrate the Irish. Well, that day is 3/17 on the calendar, which is written similarly to 31/7, the date of Russell's death. The number 317 is the 66th prime number. Notice how San Francisco Dons equals 66. That was the team that Bill Russell won 2 college championships with. Boston Celtics also has gematria of 66 with the S exception. Furthermore, Boston Celtics has the same gematria as 66, 1,298. Measuring from the first Great American Eclipse to the death of Bill Russell was 66 sidereal months, or lunar orbits. That eclipse happened on a date with numerology of 66. The word eclipse equals 66 in Latin ordinal. From that eclipse to the death of Bill Russell is also 1,805 days. Well, this is interesting because William Russell equals 185, the same digits in ordinal. But also consider how the city of San Francisco was incorporated in the year 1850, another 185. On top of that, its original founding date of June 29th is the date that leaves 185 days on the Gregorian calendar. 185. So a big number to San Francisco there. All connected to this big eclipse that passed over the United States back in 2017. So a hell of a lot to unpack there, but I think I pretty much covered it all. I guess there is one more layer to this, seeing as we're talking about solar eclipses. If you measure to the last solar eclipse, to the death of Bill Russell, you actually get 239 days. And this stuck out to me because the Pope and Bill Russell were actually born 2 years, 309 days apart. So you have a 239 combination there. The number 239, however, is the 52nd prime number. And the word Pope equals 52. San Francisco University has the nickname the Dons, which equals 52. And the current coach of the Celtics, who also played for the Dons, is Ime Udoka, and Udoka has that 52 as well. So some pretty strong connections. Huge synchronicity with the death of the greatest basketball player ever and the retirement of the greatest pro wrestler of all time. All right, so I got a couple more news stories I want to talk about here. Earlier this week, we learned about the death of actor Tony Dow, who was better known to most American households as Wally Cleaver, the star of Leave It to Beaver. Leave It to Beaver, really one of the shows that kind of introduced what the classic idea of Americana was to the public. And no doubt, a lot of people certainly modeled their lives and their morality, so to speak, after what happened on this show. So naturally, there was some synchronicity that occurred with this story. First, let's talk about the numerology of when this was in the news. This was in the headlines on July 28th, which was a date with 77 numerology. 77, the age that Tony Dow was when he passed away. Notice how the name Dow has gematria of 770 using square numbers. Using the reverse alphabetic order, the name Tony Dow sums to 73. 73 is the gematria of Wally in the alphabetic order, the character he played on the show. On top of that, the character's full name, Wallace Cleaver, sums to 255 in reverse. Tony Dow passed away in Topanga Canyon in California. Notice how that also sums to 255. But when I first saw this story, this is what kind of popped out at me right away. Topanga, California. And the reason this was is because there was also a news story in the headlines at the same time. And that news story was about Danielle Fishel, or Fischel. Never really pronounced her name before, I'm not sure. But this is the woman who played the character Topanga on a show called Boy Meets World. And she also starred in the show called Girl Meets World. Now, normally, this is too small of a synchronicity, right? Because this woman is in the news relatively frequently. But what makes this so interesting is that Leave It to Beaver, that Tony Dow starred in, 20 years after it ended, it was rebooted. And there was this show called The New Leave It to Beaver. And this is pretty rare in television, right? Where the cast grows up, everybody's way older, but they go ahead and have a show in the same canon. So all the same actors, same characters, and everything. But another show that did this recently was Girl Meets World. So the cast of Boy Meets World grew up, Ben Savage, Danielle Fishel, and now they play the parents in this show. So this is pretty uncommon, right? But Ben Savage, the stars of these two shows, his brother is Fred Savage. And Fred Savage is the star of The Wonder Years, which also got a similar reboot earlier this year. The Wonder Years was a little different because it wasn't the same cast. They went with a black family this time, but they have the same name of the show. So the fact that Leave It to Beaver was rebooted, not many shows did this, but these two shows with the Savages did, and here we get news on the same day with one of the stars. Topanga, right? Tony Dow dying in Topanga Canyon. So the male star of Boy and Girl Meets World is Ben Savage. And notice how Ben Savage's full name sums to 208. in the alphabetic order. The name Ben Savage on its own equals 76. Well, Tony Dow died on the 208th day of the year, which had primary numerology of 76. Consider also how Fred Savage has been in the news lately. He was fired from his role as producer on The Wonder Years after allegations of misconduct, which is something we see so often now in the media, just trying to kind of brainwash people into thinking that men are pigs, right? This happens all the time. It's everywhere. Misconduct. They just can't control themselves. And intriguingly, misconduct is why The Wonder Years was originally canceled in the first place back in the 90s. But this is where things get a little bit weird. So here we have the death of Tony Dow, whose middle name is Lee. Now, Lee is actually the second most common middle name for men currently here in the United States. Well, on the same day that we learned about the death of Tony Dow, we also learned about singer Amy Grant becoming hospitalized for a bike crash. And Amy Grant is a female who curiously has the same middle name, Lee. And she got in a bike crash the same day that Tony Dow died. This bike accident, by the way, was in Nashville. And that's pretty significant because this whole first hour of this video focused on the riddles with Nashville, with SummerSlam, Ric Flair's last match, all connected to the death of Bill Russell. So these two people with the same middle name, Lee. In the alphabetic order, Amy Lee Grant sums to 121. And notice how Amy Grant was 121 days before her birthday when Tony Dow died when she got in the crash. Amy Lee Grant also sums to 59 in reverse reduction. She got in a bike crash, which also equals 59. The word bicycle sums to 59 in ordinal. The word accident equals 59. And check out how bike crash and bike accident lines up with the date numerology, which was also seen in Ben Savage's name. But this 59 is really what drives it all home. The date that this all happened on was the 27th of July, the date written internationally as 27/7. 277 is the 59th prime number. Remember the word kill equals 59 in Latin? And on this same day, Tony Dow died. Check out how Tony equals 590 in Latin. Tony was 77 years old. 77 has prime number gematria of 590 as well. 77 also sums to 59 in reduction, which is also the same value as Boy Meets World, the show where Topanga first starred. Boy Meets World equals 59. And Topanga, played by Danielle Fishel, the name Fishel equals 59. She was in the news on the same day that Tony Dow died. And look how old Danielle Fishel was. 15,059 days old, with the end date included. So there's another 59. It's just a 59 barrage here. This was actually the number. You know, it's funny. Sometimes if you guys catch my post, like the same day that I made it, sometimes it's worth it to go back and check it again because I may have updated it. And in this post, I actually focused on the number 59 primarily. And then I saw this story about the crash with Amy Grant. Noticed she had the same middle name, and look how well this all falls together. But before I end, or I stop talking about Tony Dow, I want to talk about the connections to Eddie Haskell. So once again, Tony Dow played the character Wally Cleaver on Leave It to Beaver. Wally Cleaver's best friend in that show was named Eddie Haskell. And just a couple years ago in 2020, the actor who played Eddie Haskell, Ken Osmond, passed away. But what was so curious about this death is how it was connected to the death of a man named Eddie Hassell. So Eddie Hassell was an American actor who died shortly after the death of Ken Osmond, who played Eddie Haskell. And trust me when I say this is one of the more bizarre synchronicities I've ever looked at in gematria. So the story with Hassell is that he was shot and killed at the young age of 30. He was murdered by a man named Dijon Antone. And notice how Dijon Antone has the same gematria as Ed Hassell. But these numbers were also found in the death of Ken Osmond. Actually, let me just break this down simply. The character Eddie Haskell had a full name. Edward Clark Haskell. Notice how Eddie Haskell first premiered this character on November 1st, the date written 11-1. Well, Edward Clark Haskell equals 111 or 11-1. Comedian Eddie Hassell also died on November 1st or 11-1. In the reverse alphabetic order, Edward Clark Haskell equals 318. Well, look how old actor Eddie Hassell was when he died. July 16th of 1990 was his birthday. So this means when he died, he was 30 years and 108 days old. 318. Sorry, I'm having a glitch here. I can't click this. But it's, 318, which is right there. Also notice the 69. Hassell was killed by a man named Antone, which equals 69. But finally, let's look at the 168, the gematria of Edward Clark Haskell. If you measure from the death of the man who played Eddie Haskell to the death of Eddie Hassell, it was a span of 168 days apart. So I don't know what the odds of all these synchronicities occurring here are, but probably 1 in billions, if I had to guess. So anyways, the death of Ken Osmond is also connected to the death of Tony Dow. These two men, again, played best friends on Leave It to Beaver. Before I move on, I should mention this. This date in 2020 was the 63rd anniversary of the debut of Eddie Haskell. And 63 is the gematria of Leave It to Beaver. And Leave It to Beaver ended in 1963, when it aired its final episode. So we were talking about the number 59. Well, the name Eddie Haskell, in single reduction, has that 59 value. But also notice how Eddie Haskell equals 229, which is the 50th prime number. His name also equals 50, right? So you got a strong little prime number connection here, right there in the name. Well, when Tony Dow died, he was 28,229 days old, and his death fell 2 years, 2 months, and 9 days after his friend Eddie Haskell. There were a couple other things I was looking at, and I'll let you guys do your own decoding here, but I was assuming there was a connection to the Dow Jones market. Also, the Dow company, I think it's called Dow DuPont now. This company called Dow Inc. split off from Dow DuPont just a couple years ago. So I didn't really have time to do all the digging in the world on this story, but for anybody who wants to find a little more numbers, yeah, there you go. Moving on, back to the world, the microscopic world of virus, disease, and real fear. Last week, the World Health Organization determined that the monkeypox outbreak is of international concern. And this has been big news lately. A lot of people talking about monkeypox. But for the love of God, I cannot figure out why. Remember when fear used to be based on things that were legitimately scary, right? Like, people thought they were going to catch CV-19 and die. Well, then it became clear after a while that very, very few people were actually dying from it. Well, now we have this new outbreak, monkeypox, which began in May of 2022. And when I first saw what monkeypox was, I was like, oh, wow, this is going to scare some people, right? Big lesions on the skin. It's more visible than CV-19. And it seems to be pretty contagious. But at least that's what they said at first. Now we know this does not appear to be the case. But when you actually scroll down and look at the number of deaths, there's only been 11 out of 23,000 cases. So you have like a 1 in 2,000 chance of dying if you get this. But again, the odds are so low, we're actually getting in the range of like, well, 1 in 2,000 people die every few weeks too. So who's worried about this? And last year and towards the end of 2020, I started to, realize where this is going, is that they're going to keep people fearful as much as possible, but the things that they keep them fearful of are going to become less and less scary. So I don't know if really anybody cares about this outbreak in reality, but the media is still pushing this. And for the next part of this video, I wanted to explain not only why they're pushing this, but why they're choosing the dates they did to push this virus. As you'll see here, May 4th of 2022 is the date that we got our first new case of monkeypox. And on July 23rd, the World Health Organization determined that this was a global event of international concern, or whatever the hell they're labeling it. Who cares? So why July 23rd? And let's just start with the gematria of 2022 monkeypox outbreak, as it's called on Wikipedia and in major media. In the language of gematria, 2022 monkeypox outbreak sums to 237. And once again, it was the date, the 23rd of July, on which monkeypox was first determined to be of concern. You'll see here, 23 July, 23/7. I thought it was pretty interesting that monkeypox originates from a virus called orthopox virus. And orthopox virus has ordinal gematria of 220. Well, that's important because the virus that causes CV-19 is called orthocoronavirinae, which also sums to 220. 220 is the same value as coronavirus pandemic. Recall it was the year 2020 when this all began. President Donald John Trump was in office at the time. His name equals 220. This represents the number 22, which is the master builder number. Notice how master builder number equals 220. Even the word master equals 22. Donald Trump introduced Operation Warp Speed to help end the pandemic. Operation Warp Speed also sums to 220. Well, if you measure from the date that this outbreak began, May 4th, to the date that it was recognized by the health organization, it was a span of 2 months and 20 days. More crap numerology from this World Health Organization, which actually has no interest in preserving human health. They want you hooked on their version of health, big pharma, hospital visits, treatments, but no cures. Remember, World Health Organization is coded with the number of the beast. Notice the 275 in ordinal and 2083 in Latin. The number 666 equals 275 in ordinal. 666 equals 2083 in Latin. World Health Organization stamped with the same numbers. They were even founded on April 7th, the date written 4/7. A lot like beast. Beast equals 4/7. The declaration for monkeypox fell on the 204th day of the year. The word disease equals 204. Now, once again, back in 2020, this same organization declared a global pandemic for CV19. They since encouraged the use of the VAXX, which has proven to be completely ineffective. And if you don't mind me ranting for a little bit on this, maybe I shouldn't because this is a good live stream. And I don't want it to get taken down, but let's just say the people I know personally who are struggling the most with CV19 are not the people who turned down the VAX, all right? And they are suffering bad things. Bad things happening after this VAXX. I'm not too happy about it. But I'll have to stop my rant there for now. We're going to talk about how this pandemic is connected numerically to the monkeypox outbreak. And for those of you who have been following my work, you probably understand that this pandemic, as they call it, is entirely connected to the 2 total solar eclipses that pass over the United States. We are currently in a significant period of time between the 2 great American total solar eclipses. And during these total eclipses is the only time where you can see the atmosphere of the sun, which is called the corona. And the exact halfway point between these eclipses was December 14th of 2020. The VAXX was first approved by the FDA on that exact same date, December 14th of 2020, the halfway point of the 2 eclipses. This was also the same date as a total solar eclipse over Argentina, which is Pope Francis's home. So this is all about the sun, the corona, the sun. You might as well call this the eclipse virus, because this is the numerology that they are observing. They even named it after the sun. So coronavirus was initially declared a global pandemic on a date with 54 numerology. Notice how coronavirus equals 540. Well, the word sun equals 54 in the alphabetic order. And it was May 4th, or 54, when the monkeypox started. If you measure from March 11th of 2020, which is when the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic, to the date that they said they were concerned about monkeypox, is 864 days. Well, this is a huge sun number because the sun is approximately 864,000 miles in diameter. Consider also how there are 86,400 seconds in a day. And we know the number 864 is super important because when you write out 864, it sums to 864 in gematria. 864 days between declarations. Speaking of the sun, it is approximately 108 times wider than the Earth, and it's also approximately 108 times its own diameter from the Earth. The World Health Organization was a span of 108 days after its anniversary when this new problem was declared. World Health Organization has gematria of 1080. The declaration date also had numerology of 72. The word concern equals 72. This is also the ordinal value of the disease COVID-19, which sums to 72. Notice how corona equals 264. The monkeypox declaration fell exactly 264 weeks after Tedros Adhanom took office. This man is the Director General of the World Health Organization. And as you see in the headline here, the Director General is who declared this of international concern. Notice how coronavirus equals 142. Tedros was 142 days after his birthday for this more recent announcement. This means he was also a span of 224 days before his next birthday. Well, look at the gematria of monkeypox virus. 2024, like 224. International concern equals 224. 224 is also the value of corona. 224 in Latin. Notice how corona shares 33 gematria with monkeypox, 33. The sun also equals 33. Tedros Adhanom, he was born on March 3rd, which is written 3-3. And measuring from the date of the last total solar eclipse to the more recent declaration is exactly 33 weeks. Of course, the word eclipse equals 33. But what's also important is that this date, this 33 weeks, is also exactly 231 days. In the alphabetic order, monkeypox outbreak sums to 231. 231 days after the eclipse. Now, as I mentioned, monkeypox virus equals 2024. And that stands out because 2024 is the date of the next Great American Total Solar Eclipse. Now, if you measure from the date that monkeypox was declared international concern to the date of that 2024 eclipse, you get 625 days. The word monkeys equals 625. And 625, by the way, this is, 625 I meant. It's 5 to the 4th power, right? So like 5, 4. And we talked about 5, 4 being a big number up here. But, you know, I write out monkeys here, and think about it. Who is really scared of monkeypox? Who is really scared of this virus? Probably people that you would want to call this. Monkey brains, I would call them. So, that should just about do it for this live stream. Yeah, we're about an hour in, so thanks to everybody who contributed into the chat, whether you're watching live or archived. I very much appreciate it. Some of you were asking about an update on the website during the video, and indeed, we are still working on it. I don't have a date. You know, as I said before, like, this is the first time I've worked on a large-scale web application, and there's just been all sorts of things coming up that I didn't anticipate. For instance, you know, I had to spend a day or two using a workaround for certain antivirus software that prohibits some of the functionality that I built for the site, which I didn't see coming. So I still think we could do this by the end of August. At this point, that might be a little lofty. But, you know, really, there's not a whole lot that needs to be done. It's just, you know, debugging, cleaning up the functionality for different types of users. And I think the most work is going to go into splitting up the different levels. So there's going to be different tiers that people will be able to subscribe to. And based on what tier level you're at, you'll get access to different functions and tools. So it's going to take a little bit to split that out and make sure everything works accordingly, just as we planned it. But once we are live, then things that we add after that are going to be a lot easier. And I'm also going to start making a lot more videos, doing more live streams, some more short videos that people can put on TikTok or something like that. I'm really excited about it, but I'm just not there yet. We still have a little more work to do. And, you know, once everything's ready, though, we're definitely going to become the go-to place for numerology, which I think we are already. But, yeah, this is going to be pretty awesome. I'm really thrilled about the date calculator. You'll be able to see all of these measurements at once, so this is going to cut down on so much time for people who are doing decodes. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so don't forget the astrology signs are on here also with all the details. So anytime you're looking at a date, you'll get the astrological sign information. If the date is on the cusp, you'll get both signs. So we're not ready for a major reveal yet, but it's pretty soon. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the video up. Thanks to everybody once again. Peace, love, God bless, and we will talk to you soon. See ya.